the first step is listening. It's about actively listening and it's about being disengaged from all the distractions. That's
Yeah.
really important. So you're not
Yeah.
on your phone. The kids are not on their tablet.
Yeah.
There's no screens on. The TV's not on.
Yeah.
That's actually the first most important thing. So then those 10 minutes are happening and you are forced just by turning everything off to really pay attention to them.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that alone is one of the most powerful things
Yeah.
that a lot of modern parenting books kind of gloss over. And so you're paying attention to them and then you're saying yes, and as the improv starting to come in, what that's doing is you're accepting their
Mm.
ideas and you're building on them. And
Yeah.
you're creating things together. You're
Yeah.
creating imaginary situations, you're creating playtimes. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I mentioned that a lot in the book too. I don't know what your playtime's going to look like. I don't know what my playtime's going to look like tomorrow
Yeah.
because it's always going to be different. And I love that.
Okay, this is In Conversation with Frank Schaefer, and I am Frank Schaefer, and my guest today is Christopher Mannino. And Chris, is it Chris or Christopher when we're just talking?
Oh, you can
Chris.
call me Chris.
Okay,
Christopher is the author
Chris
name.
is a former theater teacher and an expert in helping parents and kids connect. He has been featured in Parenting Today, Business Insider, Newsweek, and PBS. He is the author of Making It Up, a revolutionary way to bond with kids through play. I've got a copy here to hold up for you. In Conversation with Frank Schaefer is a podcast. We go live first on YouTube and then it goes everywhere. And I'm asking you to please subscribe right now on YouTube and to In Conversation with Frank Schaefer on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And to my Substack, it has to be said commentary page at frankschaefer.substack.com. You can also follow my new project at thegospelofzip.com, which is available both on YouTube for free, all 8 hours read by me, or you can buy it on Amazon. And you can also support our work by making a tax-deductible donation at georgebailey.org, because the foundation that sponsors all this is a nonprofit. Okay, that was a lot. So you held the book up, I'll hold it up, but I'll do one better than you. Hold on a second, I want to show you something. When I say I read your book, if you look at this, can you see how dog-eared that is?
Oh, yes, I see that. That's
Okay,
great.
well, every single one of those represents a note and a page and things I'm going to talk about, and we're going to get into that in a minute. You talk in the book about the fact that you've been a kind of stay-at-home dad. You're in Malta right now, in the Mediterranean, and I'm in just north of Boston. Your weather's probably warmer than mine. And you were saying you've been there for 6 months. So let's sort of start backwards with that. What took you to Malta and who all is there with you?
I'm here with my family, the ones in the book. It's my wife and kids. We had wanted to live around the world. Honestly, that starts at the pandemic. Very clearly, I was working for Business Insider at the time. And as you, I'm sure, remember, everything was, shut
Sure.
down, trapped. It was, the pandemic. Everybody remembers. And I ended up doing an interview, a piece with this world schooling, a group of multiple people who were world schooling. I'd never even heard of that.
Yeah.
And these were people who were taking their kids around the world to sort
Hmm.
of give them a different look at the world, a different type of education. And the fact that that interview happened when we were in lockdown, and my
Yeah.
wife and I had both lived abroad, and we were like, we want to do this. So we
Yeah.
had always planned. We're going very, very slowly. We're going to be in Malta, and that's our base for a few years.
Yeah.
We're not going, some people go like a couple weeks in one country, a couple weeks in
Sure.
another.
Sure. I
We're
get
not
it.
doing that.
Hey,
But
hey, how old are the children now? I was sort of keeping track through the book, but I'm not going to assume that I know. Who
they
are they
are
and how old are
6
they?
and 9. And they are in school here in Malta, and they are thriving and loving it. And
And
they
what
love
language are they studying
sport.
in?
What's that?
Language. What are they, where are they in school? What language are they studying in?
Oh, English. Malta speaks English.
Yeah, yeah, I know that, but I was just curious whether with some of this international stuff, whether you're doing some language things as well, or is it all English? Because you're of Italian derivation, and I asked you if you speak Italian because I speak a little Italian, and I was going to chit chat with you. But are they doing
No, I'm afraid I
any?
only know English. For the beginning, we would love to get them immersed in some languages later on for the first move, because I mean, that's a pretty big transition. Like
Yeah,
we sold almost everything we own, moved continents and knew nobody here.
Yeah,
And to be honest, we had never been to Malta until my son and I, just him and I, came to literally select a house as part of the visa process.
sure.
And we were already in that point when we had first come here. So we wanted to go to an English speaking place and an English
Hmm.
speaking school to start. Does
Sure.
that mean we'll go somewhere not English speaking next?
Yeah.
Very possibly.
Well, one of my kids, and one of my adult children, Francis, teaches physics and math at a bilingual high school nearby here, and also runs the robotics and program in Makerspace. When we moved here from Switzerland in 1980, he was 7 at the time. His sister was 10, and they had been in the Swiss public school system and were fluent French speakers because of that. Then we found a bilingual high school nearby here by very good fortune. I mean, it's not typical, but they, were French English, and so of course it made the transition much easier for them because they were able to keep going with the language. Um, that's neither here nor there. Let me jump into the book here a second. The first thing I'm going to ask you is, in the book, you're talking about the fact that you are the primary caregiver for your kids these days, or do you share that with your wife, or how did that work, and how did you get into that?
During the writing of the book, for about 7.5 years, I was the primary. At this point, we've both gone back to work full time,
Sure.
like right now as we're doing this talk. So we split that now, and we have babysitters help us too. But for 7.5 years, I was the primary because when we had our son, I was teaching. I was teaching high school theater.
Yeah.
My wife was working. My wife was actually working for the Peace Corps at the time. And she was making exactly double as I was for
Sure.
significantly less hours. And I was having panic attacks when my son was in daycare, and we were like, we don't really like this.
Yeah.
Maybe one of us should stay home. And yeah, I mean, as the theater teacher, and I was at a big program, we did 5 productions a year. It was a wonderful theater program.
That's
But
yeah.
I was at school like 12 hours a day,
Yeah.
five, sometimes even 6 days a week, again for half the pay.
And of
So we
course, the
decided
through
I
line in
would
your
stay at
book,
home.
making it up a revolutionary way to bond with kids through play. I need to tell people I read this and I really love it. And I've written on similar subjects myself. So I bring actually some good background to this. And I thought it was terrific. I didn't know what I was going to make of it. My producer, Ernie Gregg, said, no, you're going to love this book and you really will connect with this. I'm always dubious. You know how it is if you write on things yourself and have experienced similar things, it's like you kind of, okay, fine, another influencer with an opinion on how to raise kids. God help us. But in this case, you really have got something. And one of the things that's really unique about your book is tied in with your experience of teaching theater, in that this sort of improvisational quality to play.
Absolutely.
And right away, as soon as you said that, I sat up and started reading every word because I really love that idea and it's something I've experienced. So I'm going to take 3 minutes here and give you a little bit about my background, which I normally wouldn't do in a podcast because this is about your book, but it will make what I say about your book more plausible. And I'm going to say nice things about it.
Sure, no worries.
So my wife Jeannie and I have been together 56 years. I'm 73, and we have 3 grown kids, 5 grandchildren, 3 of whom live literally in my neighborhood, walking distance. This morning I got up extra early to cook them their school lunches because my Christmas present to my 15-year-old grandson this year was, I'll do 2 school lunches for you a week because I've done cooking for them their whole lives. Literally, I've cooked for them as well, so my wife and so forth, as a primary caregiver of these grandchildren. Hands-on, no babysitters, no daycare, never. They've never had another caregiver except me and my wife, Jeannie, other than their
Mm.
parents. So I spent the morning reading your book and cooking them their school lunch, which was chicken, rice, and gravy with string beans today. They happened to like, I cooked so often for them, they got so used to my cooking as a caregiver that their treat is getting me to cook for them. And they will bring friends here so their grandfather can cook for them. So anyway, that was the morning. So the interchange of my own caregiving with reading about what you're doing with your caregiving and your book on play derived from the idea of, really non-structured, allow the child to do something, don't ask questions, don't correct, and so forth, fits so well with the last 17 years of caregiving of 3 grandchildren. So we're 2 different generations, But I really connect with you as a father and parent because everything you talk about in your book is what I have gravitated towards organically. And so, when I say I love the book, I bring to it a hands-on experience of something very similar. And it fits with everything I've learned as a father and grandfather. So I'm an older generation, and I've gone through this twice now, children and grandchildren. I'm a much better grandparent than I was a parent. But I heartily endorse this book. If you're a parent, a young parent or grandparent, and you're trying to figure out the next step, not in childcare specifically, this isn't what you're going to expect, but in play. And of course, playing with a child is the best there is of childcare. Non-structured play, not too many piano lessons and drum lessons and dance lessons. This is playing. And you set the bar very compassionately low with these sort of 10-minute play sessions, which I love. So that's a long introduction, but I just wanted to congratulate you because this is an incredible book. I think it's fantastic. And I don't like how-to books. I write novels for a living. I'm an author, fiction and nonfiction. And I've kind of tended to gravitate. I don't know how to describe this because how-to isn't the thing. It's a sort of an inspirational look at what the best of parenting can be. And your doorway into this is play. So, okay, that's enough about me and how I read the book. I'm going to just jump right in here and start going into some of my notes, starting from the beginning, and ask you questions because I'd like you to unfold this. So I'm going to read something from page 11 to start. Who parents like that? Who has the energy? Who has the time? Who has the skill? Believe it or not, you do, or you can, at least with some guidance. Let's also talk about the word parent. I use it a lot in this book. This is a parenting book after all, and yet, as I mentioned, this guidebook will help any caregiver. If you're a grandparent looking to play better with your grandkids, read on. If you're a babysitter or nanny, this book's for you. Early childhood teacher or daycare worker, yep, you too. If you want your interaction with children to be more meaningful and more authentic, I'll show you how. Okay, that's easy to say, but I can say, having read the book, in total today, very early in the morning through to mid-morning, you really do show the way. So I'm going to read a couple things here just to give people the idea. And the beginning here is, the secret is improv. Improvisational theater, which is unscripted and unrehearsed, is the oldest form of theater. It is arguably one of the oldest forms of communication. So the first thing I want to say that I just really hit home with me was this idea of not structured play or toy-based play. You talk about building a tower with pillows and blankets and books and boxes or whatever you have handy. But play that is stimulated by the imagination of the child, and the adult becomes the facilitator. So now I've talked a lot. Explain that concept so I don't have to just read your whole book out loud to everybody. Unstructured play facilitated by the adult, but reflecting the imagination of the child. I hope I haven't put words in your mouth.
No, no. I mean, and that's from the book, so it's words from my mouth originally, but it's all good. It's that's the whole idea, is that kids are naturally doing this. I use the term bricks all the time in the book, as you read, and the brick is the essential unit in improv. It is an idea.
Yeah.
And so if kids are just naturally full of these bricks and ideas, the hard thing, and I love what you said about this is how you naturally parented and grandparented. Yeah. And I think there are people who do, but I also think there are a lot of people, and even the people who do, this will help them go farther. But I think the people who don't is also a big group. There's a lot of people who don't know how to do this. The actual origin of this book, 3 years ago, I was in a parenting group. We were all Bluey fans. And Bluey is this really popular show. And there was this mother who had just written an article and went off. And she was just really, really angry at the show because it made parenting unrealistic. That was her. It made the expectations too high. Nobody can parent like they do in this cartoon show about cartoon dogs. And I was talking to this about with my wife, and she just looks me in the eye and says, A, you're a writer. B, you're a theater guy. You recognize that this show is improv based, and C, you need to write this book. You need to
Yeah.
write a way to teach people how to do this. So to go back to what you said, yeah, you're going to acknowledge and validate these ideas. So many of these kids are having these ideas all the time, and what are we doing in our normal day-to-day
Mhm.
life is shutting it down.
Yeah.
We're
And also,
saying,
we've got
no,
all this
no.
stuff. I mean, it's sort of like, I used to know how to read a map and get somewhere. And my neighbor, somebody I was going to visit in South Boston would say, you turn left here and you look for that building, and we're across from the gas station. And now I'm totally dependent on my phone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all these kids are looking at screens too, but it's not just the screens, it's a mentality. We need a toy, we need a thing, we need all this stuff. And you bypass that and basically talk about imagination. And there's a lot for me to get to here. When the pandemic struck, my son was suddenly home from preschool. Just dive into that a little bit in terms of the opportunities that afforded you and how that helped you, as it were, imagine what you did here in this book.
That I use that example, that first day in the pandemic. I actually come back to that a lot because A, it's such a crystal clear memory. It was a success, but it was also a failure. But
Yeah.
it was a moment for me to reset. It was a moment for me to reevaluate what mattered. And I
Yeah.
think that's one good thing from the pandemic, if you can call any of it good, is it really forced a lot of us to sort of look at what was in our lives and
Mhm.
what mattered.
Yeah.
Does the 9 to 5 versus time with your kids and things
Yeah.
like that. I want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier. You said you don't normally like the self-help books. That actually struck home for me because and I'm saying this as a parenting author, I write
Yeah.
fiction too, but I don't really like most parenting books.
Yeah,
And
I
so
don't either.
I,
I don't either. And I
they're
wasn't
not
going to say, oh,
good.
this is the only one I like, but I'll tell you something. It's the only book written for parents that, as an older person, that I've lived now a whole generation of taking care of kids that are now all grown up adults and now doing it again with grandchildren. Um, the more I have learned by experience, the less most parenting books reflect what I know to be true. And what I love
Mhm.
about your book is it actually reflects what I know to be true. I grew up in the Swiss Alps. I had a particular view out of my bedroom window. If you wrote a book describing those mountains and got it wrong, it would great because it's like, hey, I grew up in those mountains. And I felt that way reading the book. I felt that I was reading a description of what I actually know to be true. I don't use the same language you use. You talk about improvisation and bricks, but in terms of how you describe these play experiences, this is what I have been doing for 17 years with these three children. And some of them are a little more formal. We'll listen to a piece of music, but I don't say we're listening to it and then you have to do this and the other. We'll watch something, see if they like that. They'll ask for this. But our play, indoors and outdoors, and also during the pandemic, by the way, followed exactly what you talk about in your 10-minute thing. So let's get into that. Let's just say you were describing that 10 minutes to somebody without the advantage of the book, and they're saying, well, what's it about? How would you describe it?
It's about the first step is listening. It's about actively listening and it's about being disengaged from all the distractions. That's
Yeah,
really important. So you're not
yeah,
on your phone. The kids are not on their tablet.
yeah,
There's no screens on. The TV's not on.
yeah,
That's actually the first most important thing. So then those 10 minutes are happening and you are forced just by turning everything off to really pay attention to them.
yes,
And I
yes,
think that alone is one of the most powerful things
yeah,
that a lot of modern parenting books kind of gloss over. And so you're paying attention to them and then you're saying yes, and as the improv starting to come in, what that's doing is you're accepting their
mm,
ideas and you're building on them. And
yeah,
you're creating things together. You're
yeah,
creating imaginary situations, you're creating playtimes. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I mentioned that a lot in the book too. I don't know what your playtime's going to look like. I don't know what my playtime's going to look like tomorrow
yeah.
because it's always going to be different. And I love that. I love that part of it too, is it's always going to be whatever happens, whatever the kid brings to it. There's
Yeah.
lots of little kind of jumpstart ideas if you need
Yeah.
to, like, oh, try this if nothing's happening,
Yeah.
try this if nothing's happening. But once it starts going, it's going to take a
It
life of its
does.
own.
One thing I really like about your book, and you didn't put it this way, But one of my big arguments, whether it's about art or literature or music or love or sex or a relationship, is that we lose sight of the intrinsic worth of things, things that don't need explaining because they are intrinsically worthwhile. And what I love about your book is it argues for the intrinsic worth of play as a human experience. And you never finish up saying, oh, and by the way, they'll get into a terrific college and earn lots of money if they do this. You don't talk about play as a step, a developmental trick to make them into this consumer. Whereas so
Mhm.
much parenting stuff is sort of geared towards how to distract a child so you can be on your phone and working. And then they're over in the
Yes,
corner doing this thing,
I've read those books.
how to give them art lessons, even though we don't give a shit about art, because if you learn to stimulate that part of your brain, it's going to apply when you go to business school. Sometimes it's not that nakedly utilitarian. But one thing I love about your book is it's about what it's about. And you don't finish the book by saying, and here are the 20 ways it pays off, and your kid's going to, start the new Google. Although, of course, stimulation and a creativity does stimulate the brain. But I love the fact that when you talk about this play and you describe what you've done specifically, that it's like describing an artwork. It's not, we hang this painting on our wall because fill in the blank. We hang this painting on our wall because it's a beautiful painting, period. And we love it. And that's how you describe play. At least that's how it struck me.
No, that's 100% right. And you asked about like that first day of the pandemic. Why did I keep going back in that book? And I think in a lot of ways that's sort of where, even though I hadn't been officially writing a book yet or really thinking about it, I think that's where my parenting style solidified in a way.
Yeah,
I had all this experience in theater, I had all this other stuff, but I was sort of just doing it, not thinking about it. And yet these memories with my
yeah,
son, especially my daughter was just born, but my son and I were making these memories that I still cherish today. We still sing that
sure.
song from the book years later.
Yeah,
And it's
and
like those are
which I
core
love.
memories.
Yeah, and the thing is, with kids, if it's all about a utilitarian step process, I mean, this is one reason I really love having high school age grandchildren now, because thank God, I mean, from Jeannie and me, and also from the school they're at and so forth, they've picked the idea up that, you don't just read a book so you can pass a test. They're picking up books and reading them for pleasure. They've learned this is why reading is important. It isn't because it leads to this other step. And so this whole idea of the intrinsic worth of stuff, I think, your way of playing teaches that to the adult as much to the child, because I think parents who do what you're saying are going to enjoy their children in a new way that they're not going to access unless they do something along the lines that you're describing. I mean, I feel it's a great gift to the adult, as much as to
100%
the
agree.
child.
Yeah. The first thing you learned in when you're in any sort of theater program in college, the very
Yeah,
first thing I remember learning in mine at least was you knew how to do this in childhood, and
sure.
now we have to relearn it. Everything from
Exactly.
breathing to playing, you
Yeah.
have to relearn it because you've been trained out of it as part
Yeah.
of maturing.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of artists who have always said that. Matisse used to say that about children, and other artists have said the same thing, and that is that somehow the child, the is an artist. They're born an artist. Not everybody has the same talent, and then all of a sudden they get to a certain age where they're in school comparing to other people, and the teachers are doing what you say not to do, and that
Mhm.
is, you don't when you say you don't correct, you don't mean that you don't provide some structure in the whole of life, but you allow that to go where it goes. So, it's so you say many things of training periods requiring years of study and trial and error. Perhaps you worked for years to get where you are professionally or academically, yet there is no real parent school to teach you what to expect. And I think obviously, what you said is completely true. And then this is early in the book, and then it feeds into this. And here's you are describing yourself. I'm a former actor, but there's no script for parenting. And that's the beauty of it right there. See, this is what I love about your book, that there is no script. The secret to what I'm going to show you is actually the same thing actors use when they step on stage and don't know the lines. That secret is improvisational theater. I'm going to walk you through the rules of improvisation and show you how to apply them to your own parenting. And that's where I was saying to myself, okay, we'll see, we'll see. does this match what I've experienced as true? And then lo and behold, it does, and I
Mm.
really, that's, and from then on, I was in it. Before becoming a stay-at-home dad, I taught high school theater. We've talked about that. And then you say, what made this experience exemplary? We all had said yes and again, like an entire film or novel, only without any planning or rehearsal or practice at all. And that is what playtime should feel like with your kids, too. Not every playtime is going to be an earth shaking, life altering moment, but some will. And the making it up method, and you capitalize that, will change you and your child for the better. So that's kind of the thesis of the book, laid out at the very beginning. Um, and then you talk about this here, as we get into a little later in the section. In reality, not every moment is the perfect time for intense play. We work, we have responsibilities, and we have lives. I am not saying to forget everything else all the time. That's unrealistic. However, and I underline this part, there does need to be some time when you are, and I love this, and I would put this up on a wall, when you are 100% focused on the child. And that, I've got to say, as a grumpy old grandfather observing other people parenting and caring for kids, way too often they're looking at a phone, they're doing something else. And it isn't that they don't have to sometimes, but when you see somebody parenting and you never observe them 100% focused on the child, then you really feel an ache because something's really missing. It's like, the child is not your peripheral responsibility. This is the center of your life, whether you know it or not. And it goes very quickly. So I love that. So let's talk about that, the 100% focused on the child and how that translates specifically into playtime, because you're not talking every minute of the day. And what do you mean by 100% focused on the child? What is it and what is it not?
So it is just, as you said, it's actually paying attention and listening and being there, being
Yeah.
present. And I
Yeah.
kind of talk about that later at the end of the book on how you can get rid of the mental clutter. That's a much later thing, but I think it's part of that. It's part of that being there. And I've had that same ache. I've had times whether I'm on a playground or I'm on even just the cul-de-sac we used to live. I remember we would go out and my kids would be playing with some of the other neighborhood kids.
Yeah.
And, the other parents, the phones are an addiction. I get that. I get that
Yeah.
they're made to be an addiction.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not saying you shouldn't ever check your phone. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever, just talk adult to adult. But make sure you're having time where you are with the kids. And I think there's a lot of people who don't. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who
Yeah.
forget that. The kids are home. It's time to, get them fed. I'll pay attention to getting them something on the table. And then I've got to do this. And then I've got to do this. And then I've got to do this. And, that's actually really sad.
It is.
And 10 minutes is not much. I
Yeah.
think if you really can just devote 10 minutes, if you have more than one kid, I actually expanded on this in the course a little bit. I really advised you to do 10 minutes per kid. It doesn't have to all
Of
be on the
course.
same day, but at least 10 minutes per kid. And I make that effort too. I definitely practice what I preach. I try to give I only have two kids, but I give them each 10 minutes of undivided, full dad attention every
Yeah.
single day. And
Yeah. And
and honestly, that's key. That's key to our relationship.
yeah, of course it is. And I found that to be completely true. Children don't know they're noticing, but if kids are always, being given something to occupy them so you can do what you really want to do, they know exactly where they rate on the scale. I mean, if
Yeah.
of course they do. They pick it up from birth. You hand them a screen and then now you're talking to somebody. You do this, you're on the phone talking, so they're doing that. You hand them this, and it's always to distract the kid so you can do something else. And of course, I find the great tragedy from my perspective as a 73-year-old man who's been married forever and has these grandchildren is that if I've learned one thing in life, and this isn't specifically about your parenting method of play, but it is, and that is looking back over my entire life, I don't regret any of the undivided attention I gave my children. All I regret is the distractions. Because in
Mm.
the final analysis, we gathered our whole family again this Christmas. I looked at Jeannie and she's been wonderful about all this. And I said, here's this family picture of all these people gathered and children, grandchildren, and a grandson who's married and so forth. And they all want to come here. And my granddaughter says, Bob, for my birthday present this year, will you cook dinner for me and my four best friends? Well, there's a reason for that because, of course, I've been busy sometimes, but she has had my undivided attention. Another word for that is love, by the way. and
Yes.
and I'm
Yeah.
so saddened for the activity orientation of our culture that
Mhm.
has no sense of play and so forth. So that's a little bit of a thing. And you say, ready? All right, it's time to play. First, remember our no but rules. No but rules. No interruptions for 10 minutes, but at a time that works for you. Once you find time that works for both you and your kid, no cell phone, no work, no TV, no distractions, 10 minutes, set a timer if necessary. Good. Now let's review the biggest rule of improv, which we introduced in the last chapter. Yes, and. When ideas, also called bricks, are introduced to playtime, they must be accepted, and both adults and kids work together to build a scene. All bricks must be accepted. Say yes to every idea and add your own. Don't hog the bricks. Listen to the kid and add bricks yourself. So then I circled this line, all bricks must be accepted, and I wrote next to it, explain. And I know you sort of do in the book, and you do, but I'm going to ask you to explain that here. First of all, the concept of bricks again, because it's a term you use. Just say again what that means, and then talk about all bricks must be accepted.
A brick is an idea. It's kind of like anything. It's a little bit abstract, and that's one of the harder concepts for a lot of people to get.
Yeah,
So I actually do devote some time to that in the book and in the course, like what is a brick?
yeah,
But a brick can be anything. So the kid runs into the room, their arms outstretched, I'm flying. That's a brick. They are
sure.
flying. Kid says, here's your pizza. That's a brick. The pizza is a brick. If you're pretending to be in a restaurant, that's a brick. If you're
Yeah,
pretending they're a waiter, that's a brick. Every single little idea, whether it's a relationship, a thing,
yeah,
those are what bricks are. And so when I say accept everything, this goes back to that improv idea. You're taking their ideas and you're validating them,
yeah,
you're building on them.
yeah,
And just when you phrase it that way, if you think about what you're doing on a more basic level, I mean, you're taking a child's creativity,
yeah,
you're acknowledging it, accepting it, validating it, and building on it.
yeah,
This is so key in our modern world. I mean, this
yeah,
is so key in just life in general. This is part of why this works so well because you have full undivided attention on the kids. They have
yeah,
your attention.
yeah,
That's what they want. They want
yeah,
that attention. And then they're like, well, here's an idea. Here's this. And you're like, okay, you're flying. I'm going to take that. And, I'm flying too. That's an idea. And then they'll build and then they'll build.
yeah,
Once it really starts going, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, this is
yeah,
this is that core memory type of thing. This is that bonding that there really is no substitute for it. And towards one of the things you said about, the shame about the phones and things like that, you look at in the news and stuff, more and more people complaining about middle schoolers wanting phones and things like that. And
sure.
my oldest is only 9, I'll admit, not a middle school or anything, but he's never wanted a phone. And I can't help but wonder, and I don't know, but I can't help but wonder if part of why he doesn't want a phone is he gets the attention a different way.
Yeah, sure.
He knows, like, I have a phone, I use a phone, but I also put it away and give him
Hmm.
my attention 10 minutes a day. Like, is that creating a different, want and a different desire for him? I don't know for sure, but I would wager that's true.
Well, and he's experiencing face to face eye contact, person to person connection that's not about something else. It's about what it is. And I'm going to project way into the future, but I would guess at some point, if he's the sort of person that wants to have a romantic relationship with whomever he does and whatever his orientation is or whatever it may be, that he's not going to have trouble starting a conversation and looking somebody in the eye and saying something because he's not looking down at this stupid contraction. But also, he's used to someone giving him undivided attention. And the first thing anybody wants from someone who's approaching them for whatever it may be is their undivided attention.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I already see that. I mean, he will go on the playground and he will organize. kid,
Sure.
like he becomes and he did not used to be like that, but now he is like, we're going to do this and let's
Yeah.
do this and it's great. I love it.
Yeah. And he's used to to him, that's normal.
Yep.
That's the new normal. So I wrote important next to this. So what did I write important about? Step one, set up a tea party area. You're sort of getting into this before a 10-minute play begins. This is if you're doing a tea party. Step two, listen closely to the kid. Any ideas they give are bricks. Step three, start your sentence with yes and, then add something. Yes and then you add something. Step four, repeat steps two and three again and again until you're done. And then here's the bit I've put an asterisk next to it. One quick note of caution. In beginning improv, there's a common error of turning yes into yes and into a no. Make sure you genuinely accept the idea. If the kid says, this ice cream tea is delicious, an adult might be tempted to say, yes, and it's not ice cream. Oh, or you go, oof. They used the word yes and, but they didn't accept the brick. They smashed it. In fact, the response was one giant no. And I'll give you and I want you to talk about that, but I'll give you an example because I'm an artist and, that's why I've got all this art on the wall because I paint and my kids have grown up seeing me paint. And the funny thing is, because I have painted professionally and I'm pretty good at it, they would think that I would be telling them how to do it, but it was exactly the opposite. I never once said to a child, that's not what a hand looks like. This is what a thing, in other words, I let them be kids. It was yes, not yes, and then turning into a no. Oh, that's really lovely, but next time, make sure she has two legs. That's not how they did. And the fact is, they're all very accomplished with a pen and pencil. But when I look at their work, I let them find their way and did exactly what you talk about in play. And I wasn't, quote, teaching them art. I would just spread huge rolls of paper on the floor in my studio here. I'd be painting at my easel and I would say, you can use anything you want in here. And that was my total instruction. How
That's
to get the
great.
cap
That's
off a
lovely.
tube. That was it.
Yep.
So basically, that's not your 10-minute playtime, but that's the idea of improv carried into something that could easily become formal instruction that would then scare the kid away because there's their grandfather painting very, real stuff. And, and now he's telling them how to do it. And by the way, I taught them all to ski exactly the same way. Parents were always amazed because I grew up skiing and, they're all saying, make a, pizza and do the snow plow and everything. And I more or less let the kids find their way down the hill behind me.
Mhm.
And then see what they could do. And I always chose slopes that sort of went up a little bit at the end, so there'd be a natural stop, even if they didn't know how. And the fact is, they learned twice as quickly to be proficient and safe as young because I let them find their way. I know I'm rattling on here, but I love so much about your book. So just talk about this thing, this not turning a yes into a no, and give me some examples so people know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, the Tea Party example, that scene you gave is what I consider a training wheels example. Like, so it is not a theater book, and I actually remember discussing. I was pitching the book to the publisher to Familius before they accepted it, and that was actually their biggest concern. Is this a theater book? Nobody wants a theater book, and it's not. It's not a theater book. It is for any parent even though it ties into these theater skills, but because these are such different ideas, and there's a lot of people who don't, know them. The Tea Party scenario is a training wheels
Sure,
scenario. That is
sure.
that is a really because most people are familiar with the idea. Like we set up some sort of tea or coffee party.
Yeah.
We pretend with the props, and then using that language. This is actually something I did when I was teaching theater with my high schoolers. This we would spend a good amount of time teaching this, where you just say those words, yes and, so you get used to saying it. And I have seen it so many times
Yeah.
with beginners. That idea is that, so it's like, yes, and this is a rocket. And then the next person is like, yes, and that rocket is actually a water bottle.
Yeah. No, I
That's
hate that.
that's just saying no.
Yeah.
And so I've just seen that so many times that it's really familiar and it happens. It happens again and again. It happens with parents, it happens with actors. So if this is all, unfamiliar with you, I definitely try to give you the training wheels. I try to give you all the tools. I actually have
Hmm.
a whole separate video course to give you even more support if you need it. And I think some people really do need the extra support, and there's
Oh,
nothing wrong with that.
let me just say, I'm going to say again, reintroduce the book, Making It Up, A Revolutionary Way to Bond with Kids Through Play. You know, you're very much, as I said, on my territory, and I, in terms of life experience, and I can just say, this is good stuff. If you want some instruction on any of this, whether you're a teacher or a parent or a grandparent, I haven't read a book on that deals with this subject that I felt as strongly about ever. So I've heard a lot of opinions, and most of the time I can't finish them because they're so far from what I've seen work. And this is right on the money. So let me just dive into something here. Um, Go big. What does that mean?
Mm,
It means
that's
that
fun.
I want you to throw yourself fully into play as possible. If you're flying to the moon, use your whole body, extend your arms, shake, use different voices. The more you do, the more connection you're creating with your kids. So I just want to add something, and then you correct me if I'm wrong. This is play. Now, not every part of your day with a child is play. So, for instance, I've taught my kids to cook. They're using a razor sharp French cutlery knife, and I'm showing them how to hold their fingers back so they don't cut them off. I'm teaching. This isn't play. This is it. They're learning something. I show them the depth to plant bulbs in my garden. You're talking about play, and what I love about it's a different thing than other stuff. It's
Yeah.
not the same thing. You're not correcting, and this is a water bottle. You're no, it's a rocket because we're playing now.
It's when you're doing playtime, that's all that's the idea. When you're doing playtime, you're not cutting, you're not planting, you're not
Right.
doing anything else. You're not watching TV.
Yep.
You are just
You're playing.
playing.
Yeah.
And just playing, especially with younger kids, is honestly really, really important to their development. It's important to
Yeah.
your connection to them. And I think that gets lost for a lot of parents, and it is essential. And it really makes a difference.
And one of the
But
reasons
yeah,
it
you
gets
don't need to be that big and that crazy and
no,
all
and
those
not
funny
just
things the rest of the time.
not only don't go big, when you're saying go big, but just to distinguish from play from other things, the playtime can evolve from something else. So, for instance,
Sure.
I've had many times when I'm doing something that's not play, it's something else. Like, okay, we're listening to a piece of music, and that's what we're doing. But out of that comes a game. And then in my head, as if I had read your book, I make the switch and say, hey, this is turning into a playtime.
Mhm.
So, we were cutting carrots for soup, but now they're soldiers on a cutting board and it's not soup anymore. Where these carrots are something else. And I will roll with that because instinctually, intuitively coming to your thing. So talk a little bit about that. That's not specific to the book. You're talking about setting these playtimes for people that don't think so. But I would just add to that, when you have that mentality and you start getting into that, you can see, it's sort of, there's a pattern on the floor we're building in the barn when Jack and I were rebuilding it during COVID together. Okay, then all of a sudden it's like, and he gets a pencil and I'm saying, it doesn't matter, you can draw on the floor, it's going to be a mess. And then, now he's making a road,
Mhm.
and this piece of wood we just cut is a truck, and he's playing with that.
Once you've trained your mind to
Yeah,
accept things, to build on them, you have really changed your relationship to a point where you can let that happen. And
yeah,
honestly, the best moments are not even just the natural, some of the natural good times that progress. Those are wonderful. But
yeah,
there's also the times when you can pivot from a rough moment, because that
yeah,
happens too. And there's always rough moments in parenting. It's not all sunshine.
yeah.
But if there's a rough moment, a tantrum or a behavior or a rocky transition,
Yes,
you can throw some sort of play into it. And one of the examples that tends to work the best for me is like things like bedtime or brushing your teeth is
yeah,
suddenly like some sort of interactive thing. It's like my kids did not want to brush their teeth.
yeah,
Any kids, but if you can turn that, and they're still doing it and they're still learning it, but if you can turn that into a fun, interactive moment, you can actually have some really transformational moments with that too. And that can be really strong.
yeah, you can. And a child, and I love when you, in the book, I've got it written down here, underlined somewhere, but, very common sense things like they need to go to the bathroom, they're hungry, stuff
Mhm.
that that distracts from just, and so I love those little, experiential insights. Let me reintroduce you a second. This is In Conversation with Frank Schaefer. I am Frank Schaefer. My guest is Christopher Mannino. And Christopher is a former theater teacher and an expert in helping parents and kids connect. And I want to just say, having read his book and marked it all over the place, he is an expert because I've done all the things he's talking about. I've parented 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren, and 3 of them live across the street, and I've done the childcare for them along with my wife for the last 17 years. They've never had a babysitter. So I've been in this game for a long time, and everything he says is exactly what I would tell parents. I've discovered often the hard way. So this would have saved me a big step if I'd read this 50 years ago. He has been featured in Parenting Today, Business Insider, Newsweek, and PBS. He is the author of Making It Up. This is it, a revolutionary way to bond with kids through play. This is In Conversation with Frank Schaefer. As I said, please subscribe right now on YouTube and to In Conversation with Frank Schaefer on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And to my Substack, It Has to Be Said commentary page at frankschaefer.substack.com. And you can follow my own new project, which is also about children. It's not the same thing as this book, and it's the love story of my wife and I and our relationship with our dog and our grandchildren. But it actually, weirdly, is the same book. I mean, in a totally different approach, but because our life story affirms what this book is about. Everything that I've found to be true and best is where you can get if you read this book. You can also support our work by making a tax-deductible deduction to georgebailey.org. So I would like to make a little thing here that Ernie, my producer, sent me a note, which is a really good one. He said, consideration for our viewers, pairing Making It Up theme of connection alongside Jean Twangy's book, 10 Rules for Raising Children in a High-Tech World, with The Gospel of Zip, that's my book's themes. And Ernie says right after here with 3 exclamation points, smash the algorithms, play, connect. And of course, that's the message of your book and mine. So I want to do something, and this is not as premeditated as it seems because I marked this passage just before we went. But just so that you don't think I'm just making this up of having found the same thing, I want to read you a little section out of The Gospel of Zip, which is on YouTube for anybody that wants to watch it for free. Besides writing books, I sporadically write diary entries. Here's an excerpt from my Lucy diary, January 18, 2014, written in hopes that she'll read it someday and remember how much she was loved. So Lucy was a little girl, and what I'm describing here, she's 17 now, and I just cooked her school lunch this morning. Lucy, when you were 5, we'd grab a box of tangerines and troop up to the attic, kick off our shoes, and sprawl on the floor to watch Ellen Grimaud playing the piano. You and I often watched her playing Sergei Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in C minor, Opus 18, on YouTube, and you were completely absorbed. Okay, so now this was an activity, not a playtime. Remember, I was saying sometimes activities become something else. And this little story here will tell you exactly what I meant. But looking for those moments. In that moment, you and I were unwittingly confirming the most essential human truth of all, our capacity to use our brains as malleable organs over which we can exert some control. We were also discovering something surprising about Grimaud. She kept wolves. We had watched a documentary about the pianist's life that included scenes of her cavorting in the snow with her pack. That led to us reading about wolves, and thereafter they intruded into our games. Okay, so this became an organic part of our games. And Lucy came up with this, by the way. We created a make-believe world where pillows became carcasses. We took turns being the alpha and omega in the pack hierarchy and growled, snarled, and howled over our kills, in quotes. Sometimes we hunted elk, and other times we were the elk being hunted. Sometimes we settled for roadkill, and a pile of blocks became carrion. We crawled into our den with our pups, an assortment of dolls, and several stuffed animals. You defended while I went out to find more meat, to leave for you and the babies in our cave entrance. We bantered about wolf pack social structures on and off for weeks, and so forth. So, we were watching something. This is Gospel of Zip. So we were watching the music because she loved music and she still loves music. And it was a passion for her. She loved watching this pianist. But then we serendipitously saw a documentary on the pianist, Ellen Grimaud, and she kept wolves. And then Lucy began to want to play, it would morph into a playtime where we're wolves and we'd crawl under the bed. That's our den. We would do all this stuff.
I love
Um,
it.
I've done some interesting things in my life, but I can honestly say, as a 73-year-old man, this is one of the greatest memories of my lifetime. I have never
Nice.
been more alive than when playing a wolf with a 6-year-old.
Mm.
And this wasn't a game like, oh, let's play wolves because we don't have anything else to do. It was her thing.
Yeah, that's it.
She translated it into a playtime. And to me, everything that's good has happened to me has been like that. That has been, just falling in love with the experience. And it all relates to playing with children and letting them come up with a game that spurs from their imagination. In this case, it was quite specific because she had seen this thing and she was interested in wolves. So I just wanted to share that with you to let you know that, you've been read by someone who really gets what you're saying and appreciates it deeply.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And kids, especially that age, they need to kind of show themselves that way and explore the world and have that imagination. It's coming out of them. All the young kids I've worked with, and it's been many, this is this is the norm. They love to kind of process things that way, to explore and to experience, and it's wonderful. And it can make for absolutely wonderful, meaningful playtimes.
Yeah.
It's really is amazing.
And yet you're quite realistic and you say, play is work. This work can have long lasting impacts. You say, trust me, you know the rules. And the more you follow them as the expert, the more those sponge like kids will absorb. You'll be astounded at how fast they add bricks of their own, these bricks being the story elements, or start adding questions. And then you have a little list here of 3. Don't force, don't correct, just guide. And one more important note in this chapter. This is work, yes. I'm redefining your relationship with your kids. This might be some of the most important work you do. It can have long-lasting impacts on your family and on your children, including their confidence and creativity. Amen, 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 by the way. Yes, yet, while there's work to it, the process needs to be fun. If you're not having fun because you're stressed about the rules in the last chapter, just relax. Try not thinking about the rules for a few sessions and come back to them when you're ready. The rules will help. However, at its core, each session of capitalize, making it up, should be fun for both you and the kids. That's very important. And that's another way of saying what I was saying earlier, that you're preaching the intrinsic worth of play.
Mhm.
And of course, the intrinsic worth of fun, which was what I discovered playing Wolves with Lucy all those years ago. I mean, it was totally unstructured. We just followed. And I did not say, hey, this isn't a cave, it's a bed. You know what I'm saying? In other words,
No.
I was instinctually doing what you were saying and never condescending. Oh, well, we'll pretend the bed's a cave. No, this is a cave. She's just the mother wolf under there with her dolls, and telling me to go find something, go hunt her some elk. Okay, fine, I'll do it. Um, but anyway, I talk a little more about the work aspect of treat this seriously, I think is what you're saying. This is a thing. It's not just, oh,
Well,
well,
and part of it is you have to commit. This is January, right? And so many people, the common thing you see on everybody's posts right now is, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym, right? And everybody goes
yeah,
for what, like a couple weeks, and then they stop. And that's the common sort of joke, if you will. The gyms I've been in, we always see the membership go way up in January, and then come Valentine's, nobody's going anymore. This is different. Like, if you're going to do this, you have to commit to 10 minutes a day. Now,
yeah,
if you miss a day here and there,
yeah,
okay, you'll live. But you still have to commit to doing it regularly. You have
yeah,
to commit to that time to your kid. When I say it's work, this is not something where, all right, I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to try it tomorrow for 10 minutes. That's great. And I'm never going to look at it again. I'm never going to talk to my kid again.
yeah,
They can have their
yeah,
tablet again. That's not going to do anything. That's
yeah,
not going to change anything because, what you're just reinforcing that your phone means more to you or their tablet or whatever means more to
yeah,
them. You're reinforcing all the wrong things. So the part of the work is the commitment to set aside that time. And, as somebody in their 40s, like bluntly, time is money. Like I get
Sure,
that. We
of
run
course.
multiple businesses ourselves now. That is valuable. And setting aside even just 10 minutes a day or multiple periods if you have more than one kid,
Yeah,
that's a value in itself. And so for me, recognizing that that value is important, that's part of the work.
yeah,
Recognizing that when I'm in that playtime, when I'm in that making it up moment, I talk about the anchor a lot later in the book. That's all about being present. That's
yes,
part of the work too, is you have to be there. There's so much going on in our world and in everybody's personal life that it's really easy to
yeah,
say, all right, I'm playing, I'm going to be doing wolves, and you're kind of maybe even got on all fours, but in your head, you're thinking about that report you have due tomorrow or that, conversation you just had with your spouse or the thing you just saw in the news or whatever.
yeah,
That's hard. That's hard
yeah,
not to let your mind go there.
yeah,
That's work too. So
yeah.
making your attention on the kid, that can be work, but it's work that's really worth it.
Yeah, and you have a recap. I mean, it's about halfway through the book, I guess, a third, two-thirds of the way through. Recap cheat sheet: one, 10 minutes a day, no distractions. Two, and say yes and to all bricks. Keep adding, avoid questions. Don't break the bricks. Stay in the moment. Be specific. Toys, they're not necessarily your friends. I love that. Don't plan ahead. Go big. Be a guide, not an equal. Have a strong anchor at all times. Kids are sponges. Fake the energy to grow it. I love that. Fake the energy to grow it. That would apply to so many things in life. Fake the fact
It
that I,
works though.
yeah, it works well. Ernie sent me a good note. He says, "Has Chris found that phones, tablets are the biggest offender in separating parents and their kids, or just killing imagination overall?" How would you rate that? That's a good topical question.
I don't know if I would say the biggest offender. I don't know if I would label it that, but they're definitely, and don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-screen time. I mean, my kids, my
Sure.
kids have tablets, we use them. And like there is a time for that. There's a time where I honestly, my kids are both into Minecraft, and they
Mhm.
build in the same world. And it's like I value that. I actually value the creativity they can unlock in that. It's really cool. That said, that doesn't supplant or it's different than when I need to connect with them. So
Sure.
there's going to be time where, okay, now the tablets are off.
Mhm.
Now my phone is off. I'm not at work. I'm not on a YouTube video. I
Right.
am just with you. We're just doing whatever. And, we make the time for it to happen. Um, yeah. So I don't know if they're the biggest offender. I will say, I think the phones and having the internet constantly in your pocket, I think one of the challenges for us as parents now that's even different than, like even 10 years ago and
Yeah,
not that long ago, like it is kind of tempting that constant lure of
it is.
what's new right now or what emails do I have to check or what's going on. That kind of instantaneous and
Mhm.
it is an addiction and it's meant to be addictive.
Yeah, of
That's what
course.
the
It's been
companies
designed that
want
way.
you to do,
Yeah, absolutely.
realistically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
been,
so it is a problem. It is a challenge
yeah.
at least. But there are ways to still, put that aside and have fun with your kids,
Yeah, and
definitely.
I think the fun they're having too, again, you're not doing it to teach a lesson, but as they look back, just as they're going to connect better with other people because you paid attention to them and they learned how to do this without being told how to do it because you did it with them. I
100%.
think similarly, the stuff with the phone and the tablets. And so I have a kind of a philosophical question to ask you, which comes out of my book, The Gospel of Zip, and where it really interacts with yours. And that is that it seems to me that the context we're living in, where it's all about the money and the career, there's been a weird juxtaposition where career is sort of positioned as an either or priority, juxtaposed to say having children at all, or getting married, or even having a relationship these days. Whether it's, why are you in school? It's not because you're interested, it's because you want to have a career. But then, especially when it comes to childcare, and I just, since I did all the school pickups for my grandchildren, My wife and I would do different things with them, but I happened to do the driving and the pickups. I got to know a lot of the parents who were younger than me, on the playground where we would stand around. And if I heard this once, I literally heard it 1,000 times in the last 17 years. If I had known what it was like to be a mother or father, I would have had children a long time ago, because the most valid, this is, either the most validating or the most meaningful thing. People, it's a totally different type of human experience. And so, as a 73-year-old old guy trying to write a book called The Gospel of Zip about my relationship, really it's a message that says, look, I've done these things. I'm a painter and I'm a filmmaker and I've done this stuff, but the one thing that I've done consistently is be a parent and then a grandparent, and I got better at it as the years went, and I learned some things. Here's what I've learned. The biggest thing I've learned is human connection, person to person. All relationships are the only thing in life that is important. Everything else comes second to that. And you have written a book about
100% agree
one
with that.
kind of connection. But if I've learned anything, if I can say anything to anybody younger or at any point in life, it's don't sacrifice any human connection for career. So there was this young guy I talked to a few months ago who was telling me how he's been in love for 7 years and he lived with this girl in college, but now she has a job in San Francisco and they're trying to figure out whether to break up or not because, he wants to stay in New York. And I literally almost shook him by the shoulders. And I said, look, if you are in love and you found this gift and you're letting where she lives and you live based on career options get in the way of this, you are going to have the most bitter regret imaginable later in life, because you don't sacrifice human connection. And I feel the same with parents. When I see them pushing a stroller, the kid's facing forward, they're on the phone. I want to scream at them and hand them your book and just say, stop what you were doing, or you're going to be my age someday saying, what did I do? It went so fast. So I think where you and I really connect, that's not the purpose of your book, where it is the purpose of the Gospel of Zip. That's why I wrote that book. It's not a how-to book specifically, but it's a reason for telling this story with all the faults, all the drawbacks, teen pregnancy, the whole bit. The only really good thing we've ever done is work our life out. And the rest is just a job, So that's just me preaching it. But I think you and I connect on that, because it seems to me that you're not sitting there saying, well, how do I fit my kids into my job? You're saying, I have to work because we've got to keep this whole thing going.
And you're absolutely right. And I've even played around. I haven't written another nonfiction book. This is my first nonfiction after 30 fictions. But I've already been thinking about, like, if I write another nonfiction book, will it be about that? Will it be about the human connection?
Yeah.
And especially as we move into the AI age and we're in a
Yeah.
more and more attack, and it's
Yeah.
it's a crazy time, right?
Yeah.
And connection, and at the same time with social media, it's getting more and more soapboxy and
Yeah.
disconnected. Let's be blunt, like really
Sure.
disconnected. Human connection, I 100% agree. And actual human connection, like actually talking to people,
Yeah.
is I think more important now than it's ever been with
Yeah.
when you tie in AI and the internet and the soapbox social media stuff and the political divisiveness, and there's so much craziness out there.
Yeah.
Just getting out and talking to people. I mean, we are a social species,
Yeah.
and no matter what the capitalists are trying to sort of divide us up and take all the money, we're still a really social species, and
Yeah.
that's really, really important. And yeah, that's something I would definitely like to explore in a future book, and I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah. And one of the things I talk about in the Gospel of Zip, which I now see repeated everywhere, which is this exactly what you're saying. The Surgeon General says the biggest killer is not cancer. Worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day is loneliness.
Yeah.
Well, why are you lonely? Because you haven't made the connections. And then another piece I read the other day in the New York Times, I think actually I've asked Ernie to book this guy and talk to him, was a physician who's written a book on why his parents made it into their late 90s in good health. And his dad died when he was 99, I think, or 98, and his mom's still going. He said it was nothing to do with, correct diet or eating X amount of nuts or yogurt, although, he's not anti taking care of yourself. He says it's the fact that, if my dad went into a restaurant, the first thing he did was start talking to the people at the table next to him. And he came out knowing the waitress. And he did that his whole life. So he
That's
always was
fantastic.
feeling warm. And then he, as a doctor, this writer was talking about how, yep, this lowers blood pressure. Yes, you have less strokes. Yes, this cuts the chance of dementia by about 30% if you're a highly connected social person, as opposed to this. So the ultimate irony is this sort of nerdy scientific AI approach to life is actually creating a world that isn't even good for you when all you care about is longevity. You'd still be the guy who puts the phone down and plays with your kid
Yeah.
and gets to know
Yeah.
them.
And ironically, I think a lot of people who struggle with connection to other people would benefit from this too, because starting with
Absolutely.
your kid is
Yeah.
natural, is easier, even if it takes a little bit of work for some people. But
Yeah.
once you're doing that every day, yeah, you take that to other places. And I would say some of that and some of that approach mirrors my own journey as an at-home dad, as a dad, as
Yeah.
a male particularly, when I started it, I both some members of my family and a lot of people around, like I would go to the library, um, the reading group, like the book club for
Sure.
toddlers with my son, and I was the one guy.
Yeah.
And it was all these like 20 moms, and they were like, what is this guy doing here? And
Yeah. What's he
I
want?
felt very uncomfortable. I felt very,
Yeah.
and for a while, I didn't want to talk to people. I felt like a
Yeah.
very much shell. And, a few months after that, I was like, screw it. This is about my son. He needs friends. I'm going to start trying to talk to the
Yes.
moms, getting out there more, even if
Yeah.
there's less stay-at-home dads.
Yeah.
And once I got past that fear, which was turned out to be completely unfounded, like most fears,
Sure.
once I got past that, I all of a sudden I felt better. I was connecting more with him. I was connecting more with other people,
Yeah.
and that's when it starts rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's weird, literally me too, because as the only not only the only guy in the playground, sometimes waiting for the kids to come out of school to drive them home, I'm the old guy. So not only are the mothers looking at me saying, "What's this guy doing?" It's like, "What's this old guy doing here?" Because he doesn't look like a dad, And eventually, we all became such good friends that they, after years of doing this, um, these were all my pals, and so I see them in the supermarket, and it's like, where have you been? Because now my grandchildren are all in a school down the road in high school now. So, well, what happened? We miss you in the thing. So it completely changed. But they had, you had to start feeling comfortable there first. So let me just ask you what you're doing with the book. I didn't look at the pub date or anything. Just give me the facts on this so people can do, and then
It is
yeah,
out right now. This is the
yeah,
pub date today.
yeah,
So it is out right now. And it is available everywhere. It's in print, it's in audio, it's in ebook.
yeah,
I launched a course. I spent 3 months. I am actually kind of glad it's done.
yeah.
Making a video course that goes with the book. That is also live. That's out. And yeah, I'm just kind of doing the podcasts and
Good.
the interviews and the magazines. I'm kind of on the circuit, as they say at the moment. But
Well,
I'm really excited. It is
yeah,
genuinely, I'm so proud of it. And one thing that you didn't mention that I really think added, I was talking to my editor, and this is Familius, and Familius does a lot of picture books.
sure.
It's kind of what they do best. And I was like, is there any chance we could have this illustrated? Like,
Yeah,
I'm not really an artist, but is that,
sure.
and she's like, let me look into that. And they ended up finding an illustrator, Corey Reed, and I think that the illustrations throughout add a lot too.
Yeah, I think
They're
they do too.
beautiful.
And I
Yeah,
enjoyed the
it's
bio
really unique.
at the back. One thing I want you to do, so I don't forget here, is you say don't plan ahead, and I love that. Just conclude here near the end of the book. This rule is essential, but it is also frustrating to many parents. How can your playtimes be perfect when you have no idea what's going to happen? And again, I think that reflects the lack of human connection and spontaneity we have in so many areas because we're always in this utilitarian thing. Well, why are we doing this? And so forth. So I love that. I mean, I really love the book, and I'm very fond of you by extension in the sense that, yeah, this is a guy I really like. I hope people sign up to do this. So do two things here. I'm going to sign off in a second. Stick around and talk to my producer Ernie for two reasons. First, we want to make sure to link to everything you're doing so we can promote your video, we can promote the book intelligently. Secondly, if you have anybody else we want to talk to, some idea of another guest who's sort of you work with or you've done something with that maybe we don't know about, please pass those suggestions on to Ernie when you talk to him. So we want to connect with your stuff as thoroughly as possible, promote what you're doing, and then talk to anybody that you want to reference, send us to, saying, look, here's someone who's can be on a different subject, whatever. So if you would be able to do that.
Sounds good.
And please accept my gratitude for the book. It was a great read. I really enjoyed it. And I so loved it. And I so appreciate seeing that what I've kind of serendipitously stumbled into along the way, you've come to and turned into project. People can really do this.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your support and all you said about it. I mean, it is a passion of love. And as somebody who writes fiction and nonfiction, this was my first dip into nonfiction, and there's a lot of me and the
Yeah.
kids, and it felt weird.
Yeah.
It feels weird. There's no villain, there's no plot. It's a
Yeah.
very different process, but it's also like me. And then when they sent me the cover, and it's a guy with a goatee, and I was like,
Yeah.
is that supposed to be me? And I don't know if it actually is me, but it sure looks like me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is very me, and so it is a little more personal in some ways than
It
anything
is.
I've done before, and it's exciting. But I'm so grateful for your support, and I'm grateful you liked it, and I really think a lot of people are gonna get a lot out of this. I think it
I
will
think they
help a
will.
lot of people.
I think they will. And it's very accessible too. So, hey, this has been great. Stick around and talk to Ernie. Thank you so much. Say hi to your wife, say hi to your kids. Enjoy
Will
Malta.
do.
And I'm a little jealous because I'm freezing right now up here, but you picked a good spot. Talk later. We'll keep up with what you're doing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so
Okay,
much,
bye.
Greg.
Yep, bye.
Bye.